In the previous video, we added the ability to create these comments under our blog posts that allow us to do stuff like bold some of these words. And they also allow us to add in attachments if we want to. And if we hit reply, you'll see that that appears on the screen. In this video, we're going to be adding in this edit functionality. Maybe you want to go in and edit some of these comments. So I'll come down here to this comment and I'll just click edit. And if I hit update, you'll see that the comment was changed and it now says edited less than a minute ago. So it'll change from when it was posted to if it was edited, depending on if you've taken the edit action. Okay, let's go ahead and let's stop the server and I'll come over to the server that we've been using. And now that we're on the home page, let me zoom out a bit just so that I can see what we're working with. So if we come over to our blog, we don't currently have any posts and we probably don't have any accounts. So if we come over to the DB and the seeds file, we can very quickly add in a second account and we'll just change this to be john@doe.com with a password of password. And we'll give each of these accounts a name. I'll say the name for this one should just be Dean. And then I'll give John a name as well. So say name should be John. And that's just to save myself from having to do that in a minute here. I'll stop the server, run a Rails db:/seed command. And then I can start the server again with the Rails S command. And now we've added in these posts and these users, so I can just log into dean@example.com with a password of password. So that allows me to log in. And now if I come over to the blog, you'll see that Dean has posted all of these posts. So we can actually go ahead and add some comments. I'll just say my first comment and I'll click reply. So in the current state, we only have the ability to delete these comments. So the first thing we should probably do is come over to our app, our views, our comments, and our comment partial. And in here, I just want to change this posted at time to instead be posted or updated at. So what I want to do is I just want to say if the comment.updated_at minus the comment.created_at is greater than 1. And the reason why we're doing this is because this number is going to be very slightly larger than this number just because of how Rails creates these. So I can't just say if the updated at is greater than the created at. And I also can't say if the updated at doesn't equal the created at, because these numbers are going to be very slightly different, but they are going to be different. So instead, we say the updated at minus the created at. So let's say that I created this comment at like 5 seconds past the hour, and I updated it at 7 seconds past the hour. Then this is going to be 7 minus 5, which is 2, which is greater than 1. So then we want to say this comment was updated. So we can come in here and we can say span, and we'll just say this was edited time ago in words. Comment.updated_at, and then we'll say ago with the space just to make this look a bit more cohesive. And we'll say else this comment hasn't been edited yet. So we just want to say this comment was posted blah, blah, blah ago. And then we can do an end right here. So assuming I did that correctly, if I come in here, this comment was posted 3 minutes ago. Let me come into the Rails console now. So I'll just type Rails C. I'll do it in my VS Code terminal that I open up with Control-Shift-tilde. Or you can just come over to your console here, stop the server, and type Rails C if you'd like to do it that way. But I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to start the server just to keep it running. So I'm going to come in here, and then I'm going to say comment.last, which should be this comment right here. So I'll say comment.last.update. I'll set the body to be this was changed in the console. So this is going to change the updated at time. And actually you can see right here, the created at and the updated at, they are similar down to the second, but right here, as soon as you get into the milliseconds, they start differing. So that's sort of why we're doing this. But if I now update this, we should see this change from posted 3 minutes ago to edited less than a minute ago. So do that, I'll refresh, and you can see here it now says edited less than a minute ago. So that seems to be working. That's very cool. Now I'd like to add in the edit button. This is where things are going to get a little bit interesting because I have two different sets of notes here. just because of how I was going to structure the videos. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to come into where the delete button is, which is right here. And I'm going to full screen this. The first thing is this is actually a btn-group. I got that one wrong in the last episode. I'm not super familiar with Bootstrap, but it's a btn-group. And then we have a edit button in here, which is just going to say this is a link _2. Let me tab this over. A link to edit. It is not going to take us anywhere, which is interesting. So we're just going to set the path to be nil, because remember the link to has the text of edit, and then it's wherever it's going to. And by setting nil, it's saying don't go anywhere. And I'm going to set this to be remote true, because it's going to do something, but it's going to do it on the server, and it's not going to redirect us anywhere. Then we're going to give this a class, and we're going to give it a class of btn space btn-warning, which I think is Bootstrap's yellow button color. And then I'm actually going to save it right here. There's some more stuff we have to add later, but for now, this should give us the ability to have an edit button. If I click on that, we can see right here in the console that really doesn't take us anywhere, but it's still interesting, still fun to click. So what we can do now, because we have this edit button, is we can actually come into our comments controller. So let's go over to our Explorer, Controllers, and our Comments controller. And in here we have a create and a destroy action. We actually need to create this update action. And if you remember in our routes, which is, I need to stop jumping around like that so that you can actually see where these files are. Inside of our config and our routes.rb, we created the nested resources for the posts and for the comments. And this is actually creating the update path for us. So when we come into the comments controller and we say def update end, we can now direct to this path, and Rails will automatically, because of these resources, create this update path for us so we don't have to do it. What we do have to do in here is we have to figure out how we're going to edit this comment. Now, of course, GitHub CoPilot already has its own opinions about what we should do, but let me actually tab over and we'll just take a look at this to see what it's doing. So it thinks we should create a @comment by grabbing the @post, which we have a before action that sets the post, and that is good for all of our routes. So we do have an @post, and then saying .comments.find, which is what we did for the destroy. Then it wants to update the comment with the new comment params. Okay. And then it wants to redirect to the post path. This is mostly fine, but I think we can do a little bit better here. What I'd like to do is after we grab the comment, I want to say respond _to do, and then format. And then we'll say if update comment params. So if we successfully manage to update our comment, we should then do a format .html. We'll open up some braces. We'll say redirect to the post URL, and we want to redirect to the post with a notice that says the comment has been updated. Else, let me say else here, else we didn't manage to update our comment, something went wrong, and in that case, we actually want to also redirect to the post URL. And instead of doing a notice, we'll do a, I don't know, like an alert. And the alert will just say, comment wasn't updated. Oops, comment was not updated. And then down here, we're getting an error because we need to put an end here for our if else end statement. So now we should be good to save that. We actually need one more end because we have a respond do block. And anytime you have a do block, you need an end block. So that gives us our edit functionality in the controller. Maybe, assuming, yeah, it looks like my syntax is fine. So now if we come over here, we refresh, I'll click edit, and nothing will change. So why didn't anything change? Because we don't have anything telling Rails, hey, you need to like create a edit form here. So in order to do that, there's a couple steps we have to take. They're not super complicated, but they are going to be a little bit interesting. So the first thing is when I click on the edit button, I want to display a form here. I want to display this form but I want to replace the empty comment that's in here, which is just @comment, with whatever this comment is. So the way that I did that, if we come into our app, views, comments, and our comment partial, we actually have to add in some stimulus logic here. So the first thing we'll do is we have this if current user. We'll come down here and we'll just add in another div. We'll give this div an ID equal to, let's say, edit-form- and then we'll just do comment.id. There are other ways to do this, but I think for the sake of this tutorial, this is the clearest. And we'll give this a class equal to d-none. I think that's just a bootstrap class that sets the display to none, which makes this form invisible by default. So we have that. GitHub CoPilot again with the very strong opinions on what we should do. Let me just tab over and get rid of that. So what we want to do inside of this is we actually want to render the same partial that we have on our posts show page. So if we come into our show page, we have this render form right here, the comment/form. So let's actually take that and copy it. We'll paste it in here. And one of the things you'll realize is this is just passing in the post as a reference, right? So if we save this, and I'm actually going to get rid of this d-none for a second. If we save this, we come over here and we refresh, you'll see that the form is rendered in here, but the body of the form, like this value, isn't what was in the comment itself. So we actually need to take the comment's body and sort of put it into that form somehow. The way we can do that is by just passing in a second parameter here that says the comment is comment. So the comment in the form is going to be this comment right here that we've been using, and that's the one that has all of this data. So we can pass in the comment like this, but the trick is inside of our show page, we also need to pass in a comment here. So we also need to say comment is equal to something. And this comment needs to be whatever we're using in the form right now. So if we come into the form right now, not the post form, if we come into the comment form, we have our form with and a model, and the model takes in a post and the comment. So we actually need to take this, cut it out of here, come into our show page, and this is what we need to pass in. But of course, this post doesn't exist because it's actually @post here. So we'll pass in @post.comments.build, which will give us a new comment. And we can save that. And then in our form, we just want to put in the comment variable that we've been passing in from both our comment partial right here and our show page right here. And that gives us both of those comments the way we would expect to have them. So if we come over here and refresh, and assuming I've done this correctly, you'll see this one is still an empty comment, but this one has the body of the text in it. Okay, so now when we click on this edit button, I'd like to, well, first let's hide this form, right? So let me come over here, and then let me come over to the comment partial, and in here, we want this to be the d-none again. We'll save that, refresh. So now our form is hidden. Of course, clicking edit won't do anything, but we know that form is there, it's just invisible. So what we should do is we're going to need to be able to hide the body. So let's give the body an ID. So we'll create a div here, and we'll say this has an ID equal to, and we'll do something similar to what we did up there. It has an ID of comment-body- and then we'll just create the comment.id again. So it has that as the ID, and then let's wrap this in a closing tag and tab it over. We'll use that in our JavaScript in a minute here. It won't change anything on the page, but it's just a way for us to have an identifier around it. Now, what we need to do is actually attach some JavaScript to this. So let's start there. So in Rails by default, you have some limited JavaScript in the form of stimulus. And it's going to be inside of your app JavaScript folder, and more specifically your controllers. So in your overall application.js, let me full screen this, you'll see it imports hot-wired turbo rails, it imports controllers, tricks, and action text. This controllers is, of course, your controllers folder, And all of this is coming from your import map in config/import maps. If you come down to config and your import map, there's this way of installing NPM packages if you're familiar with NPM. And all you do is you pin like package names to whatever their resource is, I think is how that works. Tricks is your text editor. So that's the thing. That's what this form right here is with all the fancy what you see is what you get options. Action text is also related to your fancy form options. You have your app JavaScript controllers under controllers. So you can see here, this is actually the best example. You pin app/JavaScript/controllers under controllers. And then in your application.js, that's how you're able to import just the word controllers. So that's sort of what's happening here. Some of these other ones come from some mysterious places, which it doesn't really matter for the sake of this. But the important thing is right here, I have access to stimulus. And that's what we're going to use in this part of the tutorial. So if we come into JavaScript controllers, we can create a new file. And let me just check and see what I name this. So if we right click new file, we'll say this is the comments_controller.js. And in here, we can actually come into the hello controller. We'll just grab all of this and we'll paste it into the comments controller. So the first thing it does is it imports controller from hotwired stimulus. That's fine. The other thing it does is it creates an export default class that extends controller. Now it's not a named class, but it will get the name based on the file name. So the only method in here is a connect method. And in the example with the hello controller, it's set an element, but let's instead just do a console.log where we say, sure, hello stimulus. So let's do that. Let's come over to our browser and we'll hit Control-Shift-I to open up our web dev tools and we'll refresh. You'll see that nothing's happening. Stimulus needs a way to identify which page it's supposed to run on. And the way that this works is if we come into our views, our comments, and our comment.html.erb, we actually need to set what the controller and the action are in JavaScript that we're going to be using. So let's take our edit button, for example. So our edit button is a link to, with the word edit, nil. And then we have remote true, and we have our class. And then after that, what we can do, and I'll just hit enter here, we'll say this also has some data. And the data is going to include, not that, a controller. And in this case, the controller is called comments because we named it comments_controller. It's just called comments. So we have a comments controller. Let's save this, refresh, and now you can see it's printing out hello stimulus. Now, what happens if we want to, let's say, for example, create a toggle form method? And in here, we want to say console.log, I clicked the edit button. So if I do that, you'll see that hello stimulus is the only thing that runs. And if I click edit, it just says hello stimulus again. So what's going on here? Well, connect is only going to fire when it manages to connect to the Rails app. So whenever I refresh the page, it'll run the connect. Now there's also an initialize, which is going to say console.log initialized. And you'll see that initialized runs first. Initialized is only going to run once, but depending on what happens in your application, the thing that the stimulus controller is connecting to, that might get refreshed once or twice, and in that case, connect will run each time. Initialize will really only run once. So in this case, we'll just leave initialized as a empty block. And for connect, we're not actually doing any logic in here, so we can just leave that. But what we want is for this toggle form to appear. The way we do that is inside of our stimulus controller. If I full screen again, if we come into this edit, if we come into this link to again for the edit button, after we have our controller, we then want to declare an action. And the action is not that. The action is actually the name of the controller, hash or pound or whatever, toggle form. So it is the controller name and the action that we want to do, which is just the name of the method. I get rid of that comma there from GitHub CoPilot that thinks it's being helpful. And now if we check this looks good. Let me refresh. And if I click edit, you'll see it says I click the edit button. So that's pretty good. How do we take this a step further? Well, the first thing is let's stop it from popping me to the top every time I click this button. Otherwise, I'll lose my marbles. So we'll just say event.prevent default, and then it's upset until I pass in an event. And then let's also do event.stop propagation. And now if I refresh and I click the edit button, it won't pop me back up to the top, which is good because I don't actually want this to do anything, which is good because I don't actually want this to do anything on the server. This is just sort of our toggle button. That's why it doesn't even have a path. So the next thing is going to be to grab the ID of the form, because we want to, let's say if I come over here and I search for the edit-form, I think is what I called it. So this is the ID of our form that's currently hidden. What I want to do is in our console, which I think I can scroll in on, I can, cool. In our console, I want to say document.element, get element by ID, pass in the ID of that form, and then I want to say, let's maybe store this in something. So we'll say this is a const edit form equals that. So now I can say edit form is that div, right? So I want to actually, when I click this edit button, I want to grab the edit form, and then I want to say .classList.toggle d-none. And this is just grabbing the edit form's classes, and it's toggling the class with a name of d-none. So if it has that class, it'll get rid of it. If it doesn't have that class, it'll add it. But if I run this, you'll see it causes the form to appear, and if I run it again, it causes it to disappear. So what we need to do is we need a way to pass in this ID, the one that we assigned earlier. We need to pass in this ID to our stimulus controller. And there's actually a pretty easy way to do that. If we come into the data again, we can just put in a comma. We can say comments underscore form underscore param. And we want to say edit dash form dash and then comment.id. So we're just going to set some data on the div, which is just going to have the ID of the form. And then we'll save this. And if we come over to our comments controller again, we can then grab that form ID. So we'll say const form ID equals events.params form, which seems like a bit of magic here, but oops, this actually should be event, not events. My bad. That would have made it some real magic if that worked. But basically, you come into the event, and then you grab the parameters. And the parameters are in the form of the name of the controller, underscore, the name of your parameter, underscore param. So, for example, we need to grab the comment body as well, which has this ID right here. So what we can do is we can also add, in a comments underscore body underscore param. And then we'll just do comment dash body with the comment ID inside of it. So we can grab this comment body over here in our comments. We'll just say we need the const comment body ID equals event.params, and then we'll just grab the body again. So that's sort of how you can pass data from your front end view into your front end JS component. So now that we have this, what we can do is we can say const form equals document.get element by ID, and we'll grab the form ID. Just like we did over here, we grab the edit form by saying document.get element by ID, and then we use the edit form -1, which comes from our edit form -1 right here. So we have that. The next thing we did was oops, that's some code from a different tutorial. The next thing we did was we said, let's toggle the class list. So for that, we had form.classList.toggle d-none. So that handles the toggling of the form. Now we also need to do the same thing with the comment body. So for that, we need to say const comment body is equal to document.getElementById, and then the comment body ID, just like we have here. We do the same thing that we did with the form, and then we can come down here. We'll grab this, copy it, paste it, and we'll switch form for comment body, and that will take care of that. So now if I refresh, we'll see if this works. Let me click the edit button, and it looks like we got an error because I don't know how to spell. And I also don't know how to check that there is a clear syntax error here, but that's fine. You live and you learn. Let's try it again. Let's click the edit button, and that causes the form to appear. The other thing it does is it hides this body down here. It's not taking the body and putting it in here. It's actually just hiding the body itself. If I click on this and we go inspect, you should see that below the edit form, this body right here actually still has the original text. It's just set to d-none. So, okay, that takes care of the toggle of the form. Now, if I take this and I say this was changed in the browser, and then I grab this and hit Control B, I should be able to click reply and then refresh, and it changes the comment. So that's pretty good. The one thing you might have noticed there is I'm saying reply instead of update. It's a little bit strange. The other thing is this button looks a little bit weird. So what we can do is when we toggle the form class, let's also toggle something like MT-5, which comes from Bootstrap, which just says margin top -5. So it'll take this form right here, and it'll just add a little bit of margin above it, which pushes it down below these buttons. So if I save this, and we click edit, the form is now below the buttons, and it just looks a little bit better, at least in my opinion. But what I'd like to do now is change this reply to say, I don't know, like update maybe. To do that, we can come into our comment partial, and then we have our render form, and I'm just going to hit enter here to move this down because we have our at post, we have our at comment, and now I'd like to add one more that just says submit_label, which we'll set equal to update. So we're going to change the label to update if we're in this form, or if we come over to our posts and our show page, in here we have the comment and the post. We'll just do another submit label, and this one will say reply. We can then come into our form itself, and we can change this to just be that variable we're passing in, which we called submit_label. So if I do that and then I save, we'll run into an error because this is actually on the wrong thing. So if we come in here, let's grab this submit, and we don't want to put that on our render comments partial. Just pretend I was testing you. We actually want that to be on this right here, our comment form. So if I just do this and I tab these over, our render comments form should have the post, the comments.build, and then the submit label. So let me save that, refresh, and see if that works. So this one up here still says reply, but this one down here says update. So let me create a new post, and then I'll refresh. And you can see this one was posted less than a minute ago with create new post. This was edited 3 minutes ago. And let me just cap this off by maybe including a picture of my cat. So we'll just say update, and now there's a new picture of the cat in the comment there. So thank you for watching, and if you're interested in a mobile app tutorial that's targeted at a bit more of an advanced topic, you can watch that video on the screen right now.